Hello, children. This is your history class for chapter 3. Chapter name is The First Farmers and Herders. We will be discussing 2 points today under this topic. Number 1. How did early people transformed from hunter-gatherers to settled life? Number 2. How did farming and herding begin during Neolithic Age? Let's get into the points now. Okay, we all know that most of the food we eat today are cultivated in the fields by farmers, right? However, it would surprise you that there was a time when agricultural activities were unknown to the ancient people. But as I have already explained you all in second chapter in the previous chapter that human beings in the Paleolithic age led a life of a hunter-gatherers. Yes, they wandered, they traveled from one place to another in search of food and gather food. Also, the ancient people, early people, they did not have any permanent place to live or settle down. Early people were unknown to the farming and herding. Early people did not have any knowledge of settling in one particular place, growing crops, domesticating animals, because as we all know that the early humans were totally dependent on nature for their survival. But in this chapter, we get to know that how early people started producing their own food and domesticated animals. Okay, during Neolithic Age, around 12,000 years ago, the climate of the world changed and became relatively warm. There was adequate rainfall, dense vegetation, and forest, which resulted in development of grassland in many areas. As a result, animals, those who were dependent on grass, increased. As we all know, early people lived so close to the nature, they observed and understood farming and herding could be easy and needs less effort to survive their livelihood and won't require them to travel longer distance. As we all know that to hunt animals is not an easy task. You have to be very quick with a sharp mind. So, early people, ancient people observed changes around 12,000 years ago, not only in climate of the world, but they observed how grassland grew and animals increased too. Since humans lived so close to the nature, yes, they observed many things. They learned to identify edible plants and the methods to protect plants from birds and animals. Eventually, humans learned to grow their own food and domesticate the animals. In this way, the ancient people came to know about farming and herding. They observed how seed fell on the ground and plants sprouted from them in a few days. Okay, let's talk about farming. What is farming? Farming is the act of working the ground, planting seed, and growing edible plants. Edible plants means which can be eaten. Also, raising animals for milk or meat, or you can say domesticating animals. Okay. Now, herding. What is herding? A number of animals kept feeding, the act of bringing individual animals together in a group and moving the group from one place to another is herding. The Neolithic period is very significant in history. Why? Because this was the period where early people came to know about farming, domesticating animals, and started settled life. Because agriculture and domestication of animals forced them to settle in one place. Why? Because people who grow crops have to stay in the same place for a long time, isn't it? Agriculture made necessary for early people to lead a settled life. Why? This is because when a seed is planted, it takes some time to grow. This required early human beings to stay in the same place for a longer time to prepare the soil with stone tools to look after the plants by watering, weeding, and protecting them from birds. Yes? So, people who grew crops, they have to stay in the same place for a long time. As I've told you, yes, you have to look after the plants, water them, weed them, drive away the animals and birds to save plants. Yes, till crops ripened. Yes. People who domesticate animals also requires a lot of knowledge, and also they have to stay in a one particular places only to look after the animals. Now, question arise over here: how early people came to know about the domestication of animals? Yes, Neolithic human beings, they were, as I told you, they were very a good observer. Neolithic human beings probably attracted animals by leaving food for them outside their camp. Eventually they tamed the gentle animals such as sheep, goat, cattle, and also dog. In fact, the wild dog, the ancestor of dog, was the first animal to be tamed or was domesticated by ancient people. In this way, early people they came to know about farming and herding, agriculture, domestications of animal, which led a settled life. Now, early people, ancient people, they could control the availability of the food at all the time of the year. Now, in this chapter, we came to know about how did early people transformed from the hunter-gatherers to the settled life. How did farming and herding begin? Yes, and in the earlier time, in the second chapter, we read that early people were hunters and gatherers. They never settled in a one particular places. They always moved from one place to another in search of food. Yes, now, but here early people became producer from food gatherers. Okay, or you can say early people became consumer from hunter gatherers. This has all happened. Why? Because around 12,000 years ago, the climate of the world changed. Yes, and then what happens is like uh, suddenly the climate became warm, relatively warm. As a result, uh, grass grew. Yes, development of the grass in many areas, and animals increased. Those animals who uh, were dependent on grass increased. Yes, as also I have told that since humans, early people, ancient people lived so close to the nature, they observed many things, and then they transformed themselves from hunter gatherers to the producer and consumer. Farming and domestications of animals was probably discovered by the observations. Yes, and this was the beginning of the agriculture and domestications of animals, and in this way only the early people, ancient people started settling in a one particular places, then traveling from one place to another in search of food. Because farming and domesticating animals was easy than going from one place to another in search of food, because it did not require them to travel longer distances. Yes, because now early people, they understood that moving from one place to another to survive their livelihood, it is better to settle in a one particular places and grow crops, domesticate animals is very easy than hunting and gathering.